How did we become children of Abraham? By faith in Jesus. He made us children of God. By grace. Through faith. Not of yourself. Gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So you are related to Abraham spiritually. You have a spiritual relationship to Abraham that comes because of faith in Jesus. As a matter of fact, that's where it gets beautiful in regard to our being missionaries. Because we can tell the whole world they can become related to Jesus and be part of what the Scriptures call spiritual seed. Spiritual seed of Abraham. Do you know where in the Bible this is talked about? Galatians, in particular. There are several different verses. But you want to look at Galatians chapter 4, where it talks about Hagar, Sarah, and the spiritual seed of Abraham. All three of those are discussed. And all three of them are discussed as separate entities. Now, God has a promise for all three. Okay? So He loves all three. He loves everybody. But He wants everybody to relate to Jesus. So from our point of view, what we're talking about is people who are Jewish need to know Jesus. People who are Muslims need to know Jesus. People who think they are Christians need to know Jesus. They can have religion, but to know Jesus is a relationship that God wants for everybody. So much so that unless they know Jesus, they can't go to heaven. There is no way to heaven except by knowing Jesus. Well, you say, what if they're good people? One way to heaven, you have to know Jesus. There are good people who are Jews. There are good people who are Muslims. There are good people who are born as Christians in the Christian part of the world, but they don't go to heaven unless they know Jesus. So they have to come to know Jesus. To become the spiritual seed of Abraham. If they don't become the spiritual seed of Abraham, they don't know Jesus. So they need to know the gospel and respond. Now, God sure mixed things up, didn't He? But you need to remember what He said to Abraham as we begin to talk about Muslims. God had a lot to say about Abraham. But the most important thing He had to say about Abraham was what He promised him when He said to leave Ur of the Chaldees to go to a place that he didn't know yet. And in him, He said, all of the nations of the world will be blessed. That's good news. People want to be blessed. The opposite of being blessed is cursed. To be blessed is to get heaven and a relationship with Jesus. To be cursed is to be destined for hell and not to know God through Jesus. So God said to Abraham, in you all of the nations of the earth will be blessed. Every tribe, every tongue, every people, every nation. So nobody is excluded from the possibility of being blessed by God. But there are other people besides Jews and Muslims and Christians in the world. And that's why he said in Genesis chapter 12, every tribe, tongue, people, and nation has to know Jesus. That's why we are missionary. That's why we have good news for all people, not just a few. That's why all people are the same before God and need to know Jesus. Okay. So, there was a problem with Hagar, and in Galatians, this is called the child of the flesh. Hagar produced children of the flesh because Abraham acted in the flesh by having a child with the servant of Sarah and caused all kinds of problems. But even the Jews who had special privileges still needed to know Jesus as well. And so the big challenge in the world today is to get these groups of people, as well as the rest of the world, in a right relationship with Jesus. So missions is the biblical story of how good news should be shared. And the biggest challenges are two. One, Jewish people believing. Their problem is they think because they're Jewish, they're okay. The other problem is Islam. And they think because they submit to God, they're okay. But the fact is, they need to know Jesus. So as you read this book, you will see that the author will emphasize that we are from the same family, the family of Abraham. But this will help you to understand the difference that we're talking about. We do believe in one God, all of us. We do have a relationship with Abraham. For those of us who are Gentile Christians who did not come as Jews to Jesus, we are the spiritual seed, not the literal seed. For the Jews who do come to Jesus, they are literal seed and spiritual seed together. For Muslims who come to Jesus, they likewise become spiritual seed who come by faith to Jesus. So that's the important thing to learn as you begin to read this textbook when he's talking about common things between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. Now let me just say a word more also about the textbook, if I can, as you read it. Okay. He is not interested in making one faith correct and the other faith wrong. Okay. So he doesn't have a point of view that says all three can't be true. So he won't speak like that. But we will. talk about Christianity as unique, as the only answer. So you will notice that. Okay. Now, in your syllabus also, let me say a few other words. I'm not going to read the whole syllabus. You can look at it yourself. Okay. But under course requirements, you do have to read the textbook, and you do have to come to class. Okay? If you're on the roll for this class, I want to see all of you sitting there, and I want to think all of you out there are sitting there in front of that screen. Right? Okay. So be sure you're faithful in class attendance. That's the only book you will have to read.